Hello everyone in CSC-121 Python programming. This video is to help you get started with a QRelational model using a dialog in PyQt5 that is data mapped and has a combo box that is pulling its information from a different table. So I will switch over to sharing my desktop and we'll take a look at what you should have done first before watching this video. Okay, so we have this dialog form that was given to you that is currently data mapped to just one table with Qt5, and the video that covers that is here in YouTube, and you can see that it is titled Creating a Data Map Dialog with PyQt5, Python, and QSql. So what we're going to do is take the dialog and the Python code and the UI that was created in this video and modify it. So if you haven't watched the first video, this is really the follow-on to that. So first thing we need to do is understand where we're going with this. So in the class, we'll get back into the class here. In the class, this is the same video I was just talking about, and if you look at last week's ERD, we have a database that's named Python SQLite.db. It has these two tables in it, task and projects. If we look at our dialog form, you'll see that it is set up to display one task table row at a time, and you can page through that using buttons that we have linked to the data mapper methods. So notice that there's a project ID field here, or column. Project ID is just a number. It is a foreign key. So it actually is a foreign key for the project ID, which is just called ID in the projects table. So our goal with modifying this dialog here is, rather than showing just project ID 1, 2, 3 or whatever, wouldn't it be nice if most folks don't have the project numbers memorized, but they would have an idea of which project it was if you told them the name of the project. So while we have project ID that's stored in our tasks table, we would rather show the project name information here instead of the project ID. And so that's going to require us to use the relational database model instead of just the table model. So, and again, the idea here is to take this project ID, and when someone moves to a different row in the task table, they will be able to see the project name instead of the project ID, and they can pull down to select a different project ID by name when they're using the program. So first off, let's just make sure that everything is working here. So we'll go ahead and open up this and try it out. So I'm going to open this up with Tawny. and there's our form for task, and let's start it up. And you can see this is a row from the task table, and as was shown in the other video where we constructed this application, I hit next and this changes and you can see this is task ID 2 for project ID 1, and then this is task ID 3, but it's a task that's associated with project ID 2. Now we don't really know what project ID 2 is named without actually going out there and looking in the database. So we can do that just so that we have an idea of what's going on here. So let's open that up with DB Browser and just browse to the data. And here's our projects table, and you can see that project ID 2 is named project 2, another cool app. So we'll take this application and modify it so that we can show the project name here instead of the project ID. So I'm going to delete this line edit, and instead of having it say project ID, I'm just going to change the text on this label here to just say project. So we'll get down here and see where it says project ID right now. I'm just going to have it say project. So, and I'd like to have it right justify a little bit better than that. There's probably a method I could use to do that, but so there's what we've got. We can align it a little bit better. Okay, so let's put a combo box. Let's put a combo box on here that we can map. To it. So, if you'll notice here in our widget box area, we have a combo box right here. Right there it is. So I'm going to drag that over to our dialog. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger because some of those project names were pretty long. Let's see if we can get this sized a little bit better. Okay, so there's our combo box, and let's go ahead and name that combo box project. So triple click in there, enter, save our layout here, our dialog form for task. Okay, so now that we have that, we can go about writing or making the changes to the code to have this get filled with the project name instead of the project ID. So remember, project name is going to come from the projects table. So we've got this saved. Combo box project is the name. So let's go back to Tawny and work with this a little bit. Okay, so we've got this pretty well set with our imports. We've got QSql for most of our QSql items, and we've got Qt widgets that we're importing, the QDialog, the Q application, the QData widget mapper, and Q message box. So looks like we've got all the things that we needed to import there. So our first step is right here. Instead of using the QSql table model, we're going to use a different model. So I'm commenting that line out from the code that we had created previously, and self.model is now going to be the QSql QSql. Instead of table, it's going to be QSql relational table model. Okay, so remember there were 3 different types of models that we could choose from. Remember there was a QSql query model as well. So we're switching to the relational table model because we're going to use the foreign key project ID to reference back to the ID column of the project, so that then we can get the project name. Okay, so since our next steps are going to be here in the setup model method, since it's going to be more than one model, it makes sense to me to change our method name. Instead of setting up one model, we're going to have to set up a model for the task table. That's going to be our main model. We're going to have a relational model that we set up to get the combo box loaded. And we've also got to set up an index that tells PyQt5 which of the columns in the project table we want to pull information from using our foreign key. So I'm going to change that to setup models, and then go down to my setup model and change that method name so that it matches. Okay, and so we're off to the races now. So first thing we need to do in our setup models method is we need to go ahead and fix our index up. So, and to do that, we need to make some changes here. So self.model set table task is still okay. It's still okay. So we're okay with that. On field change is still okay. So we don't have to worry about any of that. Okay. I'm going to add some stuff here. So I'm opening up some space, and notice I'm not selecting stuff right away. I've got to make some other things first. Okay, so here's where we're going to create our index. Self.model dot set. Let's go ahead and create that index first. Self.project index. Okay, this is going to be our index, equals self.model.field index. And this is where we're going to tell it what field in our model from our task table that we're going to use to link to the project table. And if you go back and look here, project ID references the ID of the project, so that's what we're going to use. So project ID is what it was named. Okay, so that's creating our project index that we're going to use. Okay, next, self.model.set relation. Okay, now This is where we're setting up our relationship, or telling Qt about it anyway. Okay, self.projectIndex. We had created that on the previous line. Okay, and we need to tell it that that project index is going to be a QSql dot QSql relation projects table. That's got to be quoted. Projects table. The column that we're going to hook to is ID. And the column that we want to pull back, that we want to get to fill our combo box, is the project name column. It's just called name. Okay? So this parenthesis closes this one. We need to close the parentheses for the set relation command, so that's what we've got. Okay? Now we can go ahead and select our rows. Okay? So we'll go ahead and do our select statement to pull the rows into our main model. Okay? Now we've got to do some more work here to make it work. We'll create a new model. Self.RelationalModel is what I'll call it. Self.RelationalModel equals self.model. Okay, so here this line is where we're creating a separate model just to get the project name. Okay, and so we're gonna access the relation model self.projectIndex. Okay. Now remember, our combo box that we created is named I had this open. Let's close that. Okay, let's go back and look at our UI again, make sure we're getting the right name. There's our combo box that we added. It's called Combo Box Project. Okay, so that's what we're going to be hooking up here. Self.UI.combo box project set model. We've got to tell that combo box what model to use. Okay, and remember, we created a new model just for the combo box. Okay, so we've set the model up for the combo box now, and we've hooked it to that. We need to tell it which column out of the relational model that we want to populate that name. So that's what we're going to do here. Self.UI.combo box project set model column. Okay, self.relational model field index. We've used that before in the last project, or the previous version of this, I guess you would say. Okay, so at that point, I think we've got everything set up here. We've got our combo box hooked to that that model for the relational model. We've told it which column name. I need an extra parenthesis here to finish this out, because this parenthesis closed that one. I need to close the set model column. Okay? So, now that we've taken care of that, we'll go back and finish this up. The main work was right here, okay, in creating, you notice what we did. We created a brand new index. We created a new model here, okay, and so at this point I think we're ready to come back up here and do some more work. This setup, this line right here is gonna execute this code that we just wrote. So here's where we are back in the constructor for our program. So let's go back and finish some things up here. Okay, so we need to add a little bit of code in here, and this is the part that took me a long time to figure out, and if you leave it out, nothing works. But you have to set up something called an item delegate, and so you want to do that after you've created your data mapper here and after you've set the model. Okay, and right here, before we start adding mappings, I'm going to create that that item delegate. So self.mapper.relational, or excuse me, set item delegate is what it's called. Set item delegate. Okay. QSql dot QSql relational delegate. Okay, so we create an item delegate here, and now that we've done this little step, okay, we can go back and actually map our combo box. This is really the last step in the changes that we have to make here, and hopefully this will be the last one to get things working here. So somewhere in here we were setting the project ID and mapping it right here. That's no longer, that line edit is no longer there for project ID because we got rid of it. So I'm going to comment that line out. So comment that out, and we need to actually get our mapper working here with our item delegate and stuff and our project. So here we go. Self.mapper.add mapping. Okay. I'll go ahead and put that closing parenthesis in there so I don't forget it. Okay. The combo box name is self.ui.combo box. And what was the project? Combo box project. Self.project index. Okay. So our index is what we're actually going to use as to get the mapping. And remember, we set that project index up right. Let's see, where did we create it? We created it right here. And so that's all the changes. Now the hard part for most people when they're doing this is it doesn't matter what you name this index right here, but this has got to be the foreign key. Okay, this column's got to be the foreign key. And so we create an index here. We set the relationship. We set the relationship up right here. And keep in mind that the table that is doing most of the mapping is the task table. Okay, the task table. But here we're telling Qt about the related table. And the column that we're using for that relationship and the column that we want to actually have our index provide when we map up here. We're mapping our combo box project. So now that we've done that, let's see if we got this right, because there's a few moving parts here. As you can see, we made this change. Okay, we made a bunch of changes here in our setup models. We created an item delegate right here. Okay, if you leave this out, it doesn't work. The mapper won't know how to delegate control over to this project index. So we'll save this again and let's try it out. Okay, I think I hit debug instead of what I wanted to. And it is saying I probably spelled something wrong here. It doesn't like this line right here, set item delegate. So let's check that out and see what we've got going on that's messed up with that line. Self.mapper.set item delegate. It says Qt QSql is not defined. I didn't capitalize the S let's see. Name error, Qt QSql is not defined. Right here, I didn't capitalize the S in SQL. So that messed that up. Okay. Let's try that again now. And I got an extra Q in there. Okay, let's try it now. And you can see that it's working. So this, if you remember, task ID 1 was related to the project ID 1. Instead of having the project ID 1 showing here, this is actually pulling the name of the project for project ID 1 from the projects table. And so let's move to the next row and see if it, I think the next row was still project ID 1. We had to get to the third one before we'll see a change. So there's a second one, there's a third one, and you can see that it's picking up the changes now. Now this combo box is actually pulling all these names from the projects table, which is very, very cool. See, there's every project in the system right now. And of course, since we have our edit strategy set to be on field change, if we were to change this, it would actually change it in the database. Okay, so that is our way to make a combo box work, pulling data from a related table using foreign key. So that's the last part of this little project with the task and the projects. And so good luck. I know you've got a project to do yourself using the vehicles database that we created. And remember, in that project, your form, your dialog, is going to be showing maintenance records. So your dialog is going to be in the maintenance table, and the vehicle name, I think, is what's going to show here instead of project. So you'll need to pull the vehicle name from the vehicles table instead of pulling the project name like I did here. But the principle's the same. You have a vehicle ID, which is on the VIN. So you'll use the VIN from the maintenance table to create an index that takes you to the vehicles table, and get the vehicle name so that you can display it instead of the VIN number, because most people have no clue what the VIN number is, or they don't have that memorized. That's a long thing. So good luck with Project 7, creating the dialog form to make your own maintenance entries on your vehicle. So that's it for today.